What's going on, guys? Felwinter here, bringing you another Destiny 2 video. Today's video is going to be tackling the real problem with the seasonal model in Destiny 2. Now, I want to be really clear, this is not a rant video about Bungie. This is not a rant on their development style or anything like that. It is simply an outside observer's view as somebody who's played this game for years, and I just want to take a look at the main problem that has been plaguing the game for a while now. And to be honest here, I really wish I could have been a fly on the wall hearing the executive meetings going down over the last couple of years to kind of see how we got to this point. Now, the main issue with the seasons is not the amount of content. It's not the money that we pay for the content. I know that some people have a problem with that, but I truly don't believe that's the issue either. The Witch Queen and Lightfall years have been the second most content-filled years that we have ever seen before, and if you want to pay attention to the fact that in the Forsaken Year 2, where we got a ton of content for only $70, that was highway robbery on our part. That should in no way have been that cheap of a year for the amount of stuff they threw in this game. That should have easily been a $100 year. I would hear arguments that Lightfall and Witch Queen in total should be $90 with everything included, but the idea that it's not in the ballpark worth the price point they're charging for it is just fallacy. There's so much content here. The problem is that it has grown monotonous over time. Ever since Season 13, the seasons have been exactly the same, one after the other. It's like they found gold in Season 13 and thought they never had to change it again, which is just a weird thought process because up until that point, the seasons were pretty different in terms of what we got every single time. And then once they found Season 13 successful, it was an incredibly popular season, one of my personal favorites. They thought, okay, we're just going to repeat that over and over again ad nauseum until it got absolutely repetitive and boring. Now, of course, Season 13, again, banger season, it brought with it a foray into storytelling like we'd never seen before, where we could actually focus on 4 to 6 characters that had a lot of voice lines throughout the season with a weekly narrative. Now, in previous seasons, we would have very little story content or context as to what we were doing, but never a true weekly episodic narrative that we got starting in Season 13 and continues to this day. The issue is that it was never changed or iterated on ever again. Every single season from there till now has been 4 to 8 weekly missions with a final mission at the end of the season to kind of wrap everything up and lead us into the next season. We've gotten 1 to 2 seasonal activities, and then of course on the endgame side we have 1 raid, then 1 dungeon, 1 raid, 1 dungeon, with 2 exotic missions thrown in over the course of the year. And it just feels like they could have taken that volume, that level of content, and iterate on it in different ways. One of the common complaints of the community is that the core playlists are left so dejected, and the fact that these seasonal activities are made in such a way that they are designed to be thrown away at the end of the year and vaulted. At the very least, we're not in the same situation we were in Year 3, where they were vaulted at the end of the season itself. That was ridiculous. But even now, it's like, why are we developing content that's just going to go away at the end of the year instead of developing core content? Now, the main thing, even with this, is that with core content specifically, let's assume for a second that because of space issues, and Bungie has claimed this, many times, that's why the DCV existed in the first place, that total space is a problem. Let's assume that we can only have, I know this is ridiculous, let's assume we can only have 4 Gambit maps. Okay, that doesn't mean you can't make new Gambit maps and then rotate out 1 to 2 of the old maps temporarily back into the DCV, and then season by season you rotate them back in. Same thing with the strike playlist, adding in brand new strikes, taking out old strikes, maybe working on them in the background. We know that Inverted Spire is getting a revamp, and it's not going to be in the GM playlist until it gets that revamp. And the same thing with Crucible maps. If we can only have about 20-ish Crucible maps in the game at any given time, that's fine. Rotate in some new ones, take out some old ones, and then rotate those back in later. So that way we have a diverse playlist. Have seasons that focus on the core playlists instead of doing seasonal content at all. Like I said, you can do the narrative through strikes. You can do the narrative through other methods than just doing these missions and then doing seasonal activities that are just there for the sake of a grind. The problem is not that 6-man match-made or 3-man match-made activities aren't fun. The problem is that, number one, when you do them over and over again, they feel exactly the same, but also when to grind out the weapons or the title for that season just involves you running the same activity 50 times, it's not fun anymore. And that's the real issue, that we have not iterated on it in any significant way. Combined with the fact that they always seem to be these offshoot things anyway that are designed to go away. It'd be one thing if these things were like core playlists in and of themselves that rotated in and out. At the very least, you could throw them in the Eternity node with theirs and have a little bit of variety in the matchmaking on that. So that way it's not just dares, but you're queuing in. Maybe you have Menagerie in there. Maybe you have Sundial in there. Maybe you have Catch Crash come back. At the very least, that way you could recycle these and still have them in the game in some form, instead of it just being this thing where, all right, we design this content, we spend a lot of resources on this content. I mean, for example, Sundial and Menagerie, for that matter, they were one communication mechanic away from being just raid encounters. Specifically with Sundial, I don't know if you guys remember Initam, the final boss of that activity, but there was everything. There was teleports, there was plates, there was several different mini bosses. The boss itself had multiple attacks. Like, it could have been a raid layer style encounter with just one communication mechanic. And Menagerie was the same thing. 3 different bosses, tons of different rooms with actual mechanics in them. If you're going to design a near raid layer-esque experience, if you're going to take that much time, then why not keep it in the game in some form? And if you're not going to do that, and you're going to have salvage, which is a very weak need 6-man activity, why are we wasting the time developing that instead of using a season like this for a core playlist overhaul? If we're going to design 3 fresh battlegrounds, for example, those could be turned into 3 strikes that have some dedicated story moments and be used to tell the narrative instead of wasting time with campaign missions that are just lost sectors that are reskinned. And they could do just as good a job telling the narrative, perhaps combining them with the dungeon or the exotic mission to give us a full-scoped narrative in a season without actually doing campaign missions, and just shore it up with a few audio messages at the helm just to give us a nice, complete, full story. And then meanwhile, another season you could focus on Crucible a little bit, and Gambit, hopefully. Now, I understand that you can't have a season dedicated to this. We tried this in Season of the Drifter. For the people who did not like Gambit at the time, it didn't go over well, but if you do a core playlist season where you go in, and instead of developing these seasonal activities that just exist in a vacuum, you develop content that can be rotated in and out at your leisure, you actually end up building the house tall instead of these extra rooms that you're just adding on to destroy later for no reason. Ultimately, I want the game to be the best that it can possibly be. I want it to be able to satisfy everyone, and there's just no feasible way they could. There's people out there that would love to have 4 raids a year. There are people out there that would love to have 12 Crucible maps a year. There are people out there that would love to have multiple patrol zones every year. But you know what no one's asking for? 4 more 3 to 6 man uninspired match-made activities that are never going to be played again outside of the season that they came out in, and are going to get completely removed from the game at the end of the year. And Bungie can't deliver all of that. I understand that. Don't get me wrong. I'm not asking them to develop more than what they've been developing. What I am saying is that they need variety in every single season. With the leaks that we've seen, it just seems like they're developing more of the same. And that's a problem going forward because the apathy in the community is growing day by day. And it sucks because it's not like Bungie's content development has fallen off a cliff in terms of quantity. The quantity is there. It's the variety that is missing. And it has been missing for the longest time. And the more seasons you play that are in this stale, formulaic mold, the more you realize, hey, this may not be the game that I fell in love with anymore. But you still want it to be good, and that's the issue, is that Bungie has so many different ways they could go with it to make this interesting, to actually spend their development time in a way that they could make content that is long-lasting, even if, like I said, it needs to be rotated in and out. But designing it from the ground up with the thought process that it's going to go away, never to come back, just seems like a complete waste of time and effort. Anyway, this is a video that I've had in my head for a while. I just wanted to get it all off my chest. Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think is the problem with the seasonal model. Do you guys think price or the amount of content is actually the issue? Again, I truly don't believe that is the issue at its core. I think the variety and the staleness is a bigger problem than quantity or the price point. But that's just me. Let me know what you think. And with that, this is Felwinter signing out, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.